Hey guys, and welcome back to another Conan Exiles video. Today we're building something a little different, and that is a raid camp. The new Purge is pretty cool, and I personally really like the design of the forward operating base, so I decided to build one of my own. However, I wanted my raid camp to be a bit sturdier and dominate the landscape a bit more, so I went with an Aesir and Vanir themed camp. This is pretty easy, highly scalable, and should work in any area where you can get enough space. The requirements for this build are on screen now. There isn't a base plate because this build uses mostly palisades for walls, and there are few actual buildings, so it's astoundingly simple. So without further ado, let's get started. I began with the central tower. This will be the main anchor of the entire camp, from which everything else is built out. I used Aesir to build a pretty simple tower with a 2-deck viewing platform, accessed by a ladder that runs up the centre. This is really easy to build. Probably the hardest thing is constructing the 2-tier guard deck, which is very easily done with Aesir frames. I did also include a flat segment that will face towards the camp's entrance, as I kinda just wanted to have a flat wall to include some wall decals on. Overall, a really simple start to this build, and if you don't have the Aesir set, or if you want to use something different, you could easily swap the Aesir components out for basically whatever cultural pack you like. From there, I then built out the small guard posts that will ring the camp. I built a line of foundations 6 tiles away from the doorway and the flat wall segment on the tower. You can eyeball this segment if you want, but I wanted the shape and size to be consistent, so I did this method instead. From there, I built wedges to create the space between the guard posts. I ensured there were 10 wedges between the posts on the outward facing side, though if you wanted a smaller or indeed a larger camp, you could decrease or increase this number respectively. The foundation of each guard post here is super simple, it's just a 3x2 base plate. I replicated this layout around the central tower, sort of like a star fort. This keeps everything nice and even. Once the foundations are all in place, I removed the stone brick wedges between them and the 6-tile guide foundations from the tower to the wedges. We're now onto the guard posts themselves, and I built them all identically. I used Aesir frames and walls to section off an interior facing 2x2 connected to the floor above by a set of right angle stairs. I then used Aesir frames to build up on the second tile, extending the floor above to a 3x2 and using frames on the tile below the overhang. I then added fences to the first floor interior and would later finish off the guard posts with insulated wooden roofing on the top and rooftop end pieces beneath the overhang with frontier fences. With the guard posts complete, it was time for the walls. I threw a couple tents down beforehand and began on placing the Palisade Walls. This is merely one layer of defence, but it will work perfectly for the sort of vibe I'm going for. Palisades are actually quite forgiving on the clipping front, so getting them to both curve and connect between the guard posts is quite easy, and if it's not playing ball you can move a couple back or forward earlier in the line and it should all fit together. At the front entrance, I built a small yet relatively tall archer position that will split the 10 wedge gap in half, aside which I will build 2 walkways with the Palisade Walls a bit later on. The archer tower is a very similar design to the other guard posts, with a total footprint of 3x1 at a traversable height of 2 tiles. With that finished, I continued with the Palisade Walls, closing the gaps between each guard post. At the front of the camp, I created those aforementioned walkways by leaving gaps either side of the archer tower, which creates a sort of corridor. From there, I began on the reinforcing layer. I used wreckage pieces from the Isle of Siptar DLC to capture the sort of rough and salvaged look and better shape and reinforce the Palisade Walls. I used the tall curved wreckage at the front to give the entrance a bit more presence, and then the shorter curved wreckage on either side of the Palisade Walls. These pieces are much tighter on the clipping, so it was way more finicky, but it produces much better results that keeps things rustic and grounded, whilst also adding perfectly to the defensive look of the walls. When that was finally complete, the walls were done, and to be honest, they looked pretty good. From there, I built a small 3x3 segment attached to the tower with rounded corners, This is probably going to be like a little blacksmith's area or something along those lines. I then used Flotsam and Aesir to build a small tent near one of the walls, and I'll build a couple of variants of these around the camp. It's just a convenient and very nice way to add a little touch of personality to the camp without doing anything massive. I added scaffolding next to the tower, and I'll also be adding scaffold shelves a lot during the furnishing phase. This is all optional, of course. This is kind of just so you can get a flavour of what decoration vibe I'm going for. Scaffolding is still really janky to me. I can't quite work out how I should be using it, but I think I managed to get it to work well enough in this build. I added some more of the Black Hand tents around the camp, alongside some smaller tents on the side, and then it would be time to decorate. With the shell of the camp complete, I use the furnishing phase to decorate, light and populate the camp, making it feel alive and functional. With the lighting, bonfires and wall decals, the exterior feels even more intimidating and definitely captures the look of a super beefed up raid camp. The palisade and wreckage walls work really well for that spiky look to dissuade any attackers, and the guard posts add really good anchors at regular intervals that give the camp a lot of structure and grounding in the world. The camp includes lots of storage, workstations, living areas, prisoner holding areas and plenty more, all perfectly fitting into this Nordheimer themed raid camp. I wasn't too sure how this build would play out. It's very rare that I build something that relies so heavily on placeables, but I'm actually really happy with this design. I think the best thing here is honestly just to let the build speak for itself, so I will leave you with the cinematic fly-through of the rest of the finished camp, alongside some nice nighttime shots at the end. I know a few of you wanted to see nighttime shots of previous builds. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for plenty more. Of course, a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. Thank you very much for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.